up, guys? Welcome back to Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and today I've got a legend in the branding and marketing space, Bijal Patel. How are you, Miss Bijal?
I am doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Landon. This is so exciting to be on your podcast.
Yes, I love this. This is going to be super informational. If you guys have ever had questions about modern day personal branding, what it looks like to brand yourself successfully online, Bijal has worked with a handful of the most successful people that I know, and then obviously tons of other people before them. And just, I've seen some incredible personal branding work come out of the channels of those people, and just like how they're showing up online has just been really impressive. So excited to get into this today. We're going to do a little bit of Bijal's backstory, and then we're actually going to drop some kind of education on you guys. We're going to talk, I'm going to have Bijal talk a little bit about, reputation, impact, legacy, and just how she kind of looks at personal branding as a whole. So I would just love to just give the audience a little bit of an understanding about who you are and where you came from, Bijal. So just lay that on us. Where did this all
Okay,
start?
awesome. Well, thank you. I am Bijal Patel. I own this company called Launch. We focus on branding, which includes obviously personal brands, but it also includes corporate and business brands. And the other side of the business that we do is actually strategic brand positioning and coaching on business strategy. So those are the two things we do. How I got here is a really long, windy story. So I think I'll try to go from here backward, if that's okay with you, Landon.
That's good. Yeah.
Like every good entrepreneur, I have a really crazy, like bar story worthy kind of entrance into entrepreneurship. So,
Yeah.
like let's go backward, like about 3.5, 4 years. And I had just had my second son. So, mom of two kids, worked my corporate job. I was doing corporate interior design, which means like for, big office buildings, things like that, big companies, big headquarters, and then I did some hotels and stuff like that. And one day I got abruptly pulled into my boss's office and they sat me down. I got taken into a room I'd never been in before. And they basically were like, we want to thank you for your time here, but we no longer think you're a fit. And literally I just was so unprepared for that conversation that I was like, a fit for what? Like, you don't want me on that project? And they were like, they're like, no, like a fit here. And I go, like, here as in the company? Like, it's like the worst. They were trying to make it a quick fire. And I'm like, I tell me what you mean again. What? Like, you don't want me to come back here? It was
So crazy.
so that's what happened. And that's actually what just incepted all of this string of emotions. And then all the dominoes started to fall. But I wanted to be in corporate America, just climb the ladder, do really, really good work. And apparently, me having a second child was quote unquote changing me as an employee, and they weren't meeting the same version of me, which they were right. I was like, I'm breastfeeding my son. I'm not the same. I do want to like be present for my kids. And okay, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And I remember driving home that day and literally just crying my eyes out that like I had gotten an F on this test, and this being as focused on achievement as I grew up being, it just shocked the heck out of me. So that's where all of this began and it started. And if you wound back a few years before that, I was just doing a bunch of different corporate interior design, hotel interior design. I actually worked for the federal government, did some really cool revolutionary design for the corporate government that changed the way that they thought about spaces and people and culture, which was really neat. And way before that, I actually did, before I did my master's in interior design, I actually was in computer science and was a programmer. So
Wow.
if we were to stitch it back, I was a computer programmer who then didn't like that, left, and then studied interior design, got my master's in that, then went and did it for hotels and the government and corporate offices, then got booted out of that job, and then realized in that moment, I am completely unemployable. And that's how this business was born, Launch. And here I am, and now I'm suddenly doing branding. So I don't know, like, I guess I'm a woman of multiple passions, and I'm totally good with that.
The thing that stuck out about that last bit that you just shared was revolutionizing the way that government interiors look. I mean, I think about a government interior and I think about this just light gray, steel desk, cubicles everywhere. And so you would go into those kind of spaces and then basically rethink them for them to make them like palatable, basically.
Yes, to actually like bring them forward into what was then like 2008, like bring them forward and they look like they were, that movie, The Office Space?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
seen,
It's one of the
it's
greatest
like
movies ever.
the
Yeah.
funniest movie of all time.
Yeah.
That background was like exactly where I worked. And instead of it being gray, it was just beige on beige on beige. Like I probably would have
Wow.
gotten lost in there. And the cubicles were just as high as like a shower. And then you had a shower sliding door. And they didn't believe in transparency. They believed in opaqueness. And like they didn't want to talk to anybody. They only wanted privacy. They didn't want to communicate or collaborate with anyone. And we completely changed that around. It was crazy.
Wow. Fascinating. And so what's really interesting about this is I think about my past career and how it's kind of led me to where I am today. I started off, I'm a farm kid from a town of like 500 people, and basically grew from there to go to the University of Nebraska. I went to 4-year school. Mechanized systems management was my degree, but literally nothing to do with what I do today, aside from the technical analysis of like a business and like the process orientation of a business and how important process is. And so it's just
Yeah.
interesting. Like I'm sure that you even look at that and you're like, oh, I definitely pull things from that job and I pull those forward to what I do today.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're speaking and you said mechanized systems processing, is that
Mechanized systems management was my
management?
exact major. Yeah.
Okay, like that actually does sound like how you package your current business is, right? It's not one, like you've had multiple, you've been a serial entrepreneur. And I see the thread in that because you're
Mhm.
like, I take everything, I make it a process, I systematize it, I dial everything in,
Yeah.
everything's a well-oiled machine, along with this other creative side. So it's funny that you said that because I do read that from you in your background. I didn't know about the farm kid thing though. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
It's where the
But yeah,
work ethic comes
absolutely.
in from.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Same.
That's good.
Well, I was born in Martinsville, Indiana, and it probably only had 500 people in there too. So I get you from that immigrant, like second generation here in America. Like the work ethic is 100% there.
That's awesome. That's super
Yeah.
cool. And do you have a lot of pressure when you're growing up to do any specific career or any specific path? What was your pressure?
Oh, it was 100%. Like you don't grow up in Indian culture and not be pressurized to like remain as left brained as you can humanly go.
Right.
So this is where my parents, when I was graduating high school, were like, we have two choices we think are good for you. We're thinking pharmacy, good for you being girl, and you need to raise your kids in your house. And I'm like 17. I'm like, what kids, what house? They're like, you need to be good wife, and pharmacy has good hours. Me and dad like that for you. Or you can do computer science like your brother. They're buying people cars out in California if you want to do that. And so I went. I was like, God, I was like, dang. Okay, so we're not doing arts, even though I loved it. And that wasn't an option. So I went and worked at Walgreens pharmacy for 4 months, and I got politely kind of pushed out the door where they were like, you don't fit in here. And I was like, this is the most boring job on planet Earth. It really is just pushing pills. So that didn't work out.
Literally.
So
Yeah.
yeah, literally, that's what it is. It's just spraying things with disinfectant, having people yell at you in the drive-through at Walgreens, like your McDonald's, and then pushing pills. So that wasn't going to cut it. So I just defaulted to computer science. And I was one of the few females who went through a computer science program in 2000, like
Wow.
one of the few. So
You're
I
like
was about to,
C sharp, early
yeah,
HTML, that correct?
Java,
Yeah.
Java,
Java.
HTML, C++.
Mhm.
Oh my God, you're taking me back. JCL, SAS. How many things did I learn that are like not exactly useful right now? But
Yeah.
the thinking is, because one of my favorite things to do was to actually, this word algorithm gets thrown around in our world of social media and organic all the time.
Right.
But every time you're developing a program, you need to understand what is the algorithm, that's the magic behind why does this program work. And I loved
Mhm.
doing that. So I still think very much, I think like a programmer, even though I show up as a designer or a brand strategist.
That's
So
so
that still
dope.
comes into play. Yeah.
That's super cool. I remember paying a guy when I was just getting out of actually just graduated, and I thought I wanted to build an app actually. And so I ended up going to a guy who's a developer. He was actually Indian as well. And he was a developer at like a really huge healthcare company. He was like very, very top of the top. And obviously I'm getting advice from like the Michael Jordan of somebody that's like, he's all the way at the top of one of the largest healthcare providers in the world. And he's like a senior developer. So he's full stack. And I'm like asking him not even one-on-one questions. I don't even know what questions to ask him. And so, that didn't last very long, obviously. And I
That's
just decided, I'm like,
hilarious.
so I guess I'm going to be the sales guy or the marketing guy, and I'm never going to do this again. But yeah, that was one of my first businesses that I ever wanted to make, was actually an app. So
That's
that's
hilarious. See,
so
look at that.
yeah. And here we are.
And here we are,
That's so
an
good.
old
Well,
programmer, an app developer in the making. And like,
yep.
that's so funny you say that, because like now I want an app. Like now I want an app. I'm like, we need to have some kind of SaaS tool. Like we need something to take this mysticism and intangible nature of branding that's all quote unquote art and creative and right brained. And we need to put it into some type of app that creates almost like a scientific formula or a computer algorithm and makes sense of some of this branding so people could utilize it better in their business.
My gosh, if you can figure that out, you'll be printing money, and you'll never have to work ever again.
But who wants to do
I
that?
literally
Who
believe
wants
it's
to
that big of
never
a
work
problem.
again? Like working is fun. Why would you stop?
I mean, like you, as soon as you solve that problem, you work towards solving that problem, you could exit for enough money. You would have unlimited funds
Funds,
there, because I think it's
funds to start
such,
more businesses and do more
yeah, so you can go
passions.
work again. I legitimately think it's that big of a problem though. I think that there's
Yeah.
so many people that, we were just talking about this right before the call started. What was the quote that you said about like revenue and trust versus
Oh, yeah,
marketing?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So people often get confused the difference between marketing and branding. And marketing is really about generating revenue, and branding is about generating trust. And what happens with branding is you need both. Branding and marketing are cousins. Like marketing is short term, branding is long term. Branding generates long term revenue recognition. And a lot of people miss that. And when they're thinking about their overall business and brand strategy.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's good. Yeah, you guys are going to like rewind 15 seconds and listen to that over and over and over and over again. And then I want to have you give some more examples of that. So I think when there's a lot of young business owners that listen to this show. And I think when a lot of them get started, they're like, okay, I got to have a brand. So immediately they go, boom, visual identity, logo. I need that. But then like, they're like, oh, marketing is important. And then they just kind of either lump them together, think that logo is brand, marketing is basically kind of like sales. And I think that this just like gets sloshed around in a bucket when you're sub
Right.
six figures. I would say like even especially less than six figures a year, you really are just like, we're just trying to survive right now.
Yep.
So there's a lot of confusion, I would say, in young entrepreneurs when they get started with that. How would you demystify all of those things? And could you give examples of each one before we kind of get into the actual meat of the training here?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start with the branding part first, because it's the easiest and it's what I sell. You don't need branding. So like if you are doing less than 20K a month, and I'll do the math for you, 20 times 12 is 240K of revenue. So let's just round it up. If you are not doing $250,000 of revenue a year, you need to stop fronting and fretting about your brand. Like at very basic, the only branding things that you need are a name and a very basic thing called a word mark, which is like if you were the station company, use a fancy font and call it the station company, and that's all you need. So a lot of people get caught up in, I need a brand, I need a brand. And even if you go look at most people's websites, they usually really, really are not great at developing the brand holistically. And so you have a web developer trying to act like a creative brand director, which they're not. And so most websites are pretty basic looking. So if your industry absolutely requires a website, and I'm talking to people who are like in e-commerce,
Right.
Yes, you need a website because people cannot buy your product. But if you're like a coach, if you're a consultant, if you're one of those type of people, if you're selling info products, you don't need a website. Like you can have social media business page and have one or two social media accounts to show that you're a real member of like what you're saying that you do, the station company. And that's it. Keep it simple. Please don't try to get like 99 designs or Fiverr to come up with a design for you. You will only have to backtrack from like the embarrassment that you've created. And it's
So
legitimately not worthy. So all you want to do at this moment is to have a name and a very basic word mark, which is just fancy font on your company name, enough to show that you are a legitimate business, to create that little bit of trust. Whereas what happens is people knee-jerk reaction, go to Fiverr, spend $300, $500, $3,000, come out with these hideous looking visual brands that actually cheapen your product. And I see it set a lot of people back instead of allowing them to set forward. So
yeah.
you don't need fancy branding when you're at 20K less a month. Sales and marketing, that's really interesting. I would say there's another piece that you actually need versus either one of those things, is you need an offer that you can sell to people that they actually want to buy, which involves not talking to like your 3 friends who are also in business and saying, hey man, you think if I made something like that, like, do you think people would buy it? And then your friend's like, yeah, man, I think that's super good, dude. I'd buy that all day, except for they won't. They won't buy it all day. So note to self, your friends and family are very unlikely to buy your stuff. Get over your hurt feelings and move on. It's easier to sell to a stranger. So you need to get your offer in play. And the only way to do that, get on a phone, get on Zoom, start talking to your potential market, people who would buy your thing. Hey, so like, here's what I'm thinking about. What would help you? What are your pain points? What if I offered this, like, as this as a solution, and literally try to get it sold. So it's offer first, then you sell it, and then you reverse engineer and figure out the marketing that worked for the offer that you just sold.
Right. Because they have to be able to, you have to start from what they said yes to. If you're starting from just and I made this mistake when I first got started in business as well. If you make the mistake of just saying, well, I'm going to put a bunch of fancy words on paper and I'm going to say, this is exactly what it is. And you may get people to bite on that, and that you may be able to end up building a lot more marketing around that. But in reality, having 20 conversations and saying, what do you think about this? And then letting your brain actually in the background come up with sentences and record all your Zoom calls, and like then use that language from those conversations to inform your marketing is a way easier. It's like frictionless. Like you create marketing language just by talking.
Exactly. And people don't realize that your marketing gets better once you've sold the product. Even once, twice you get brownie points. Third time around you sold it, we're pretty much having a party for you. Like you're going to be 7 figures next year. We're like, I'm kidding. You're not. You're not going to be 7 figures next year. Let's just get real on that. Okay. Relax. That doesn't happen to people. Stop buying people's crap. So you have to understand that it is a seesaw between marketing and sales. And I have coached hundreds of people at this point. People who are stronger at marketing are weaker at sales. People who are stronger at sales are weaker at marketing. I don't know what it is in the brain that does that, but you'll figure out what your rhythm is. But the process is offer, then then sell the offer. So sales, then reverse engineer, come up with the marketing, what that is. And then once you hit past 250K a month, then you're allowed to even start to worry about what your branding is.
Super good. Super good.
That's going to save a lot of people a lot of wasted effort. And one thing I think we need to do better is to help educate the audience that, like, you understand that 99% of branding people would have never come on here and told you, please don't buy branding when you're not here. You don't need it. So that's very much a Bijal and kind of a launch vibe. We're super bold. We're super transparent. We're super honest with our messaging. But the 100%, 99% of marketers out there will tell you you have a marketing problem. 99% of the sales gurus and sales coaches out there will like vehemently convince you that you have a sales problem. You really need to understand where you fit into the sequence and get in front of a coach who is actually going to guide you on what is your actual problem, not what your perceived problem is. Somebody is always willing to sell you something to feed into your fear. And I see a lot of people like slipping and sliding on, the imaginary ice rink, because they're just hoping that if they can just buy this next thing and the person can help them, they're going to get momentum and they're going to get to their next level. And oftentimes we're misguided that other people need to sell their products. We live in a world of capitalism. So like, put on your belt, strap in, and you're going to have people try to sell you some stuff, or market you things that you don't really need.
That's wow. Yeah, incredibly well said. I mean, I can, as you were saying that, I was literally like analyzing my life for the last even 2 years and thinking about how many times where I came to somebody who was phenomenal at selling or phenomenal at marketing. I told them a problem that I had, and they're like, "Oh, well, my solution will fix that in 5 seconds."
Of course
And
it
it was
does.
just
As
like,
soon as you
"Oh,"
told it to them, they're like, I have the 3-point system on helping Landon Rhodes get from point A to point B. That's actually, we've just been waiting for you. And then
and I've helped
somehow
100 Landon Roads this
Landon
with this
Roads, yes,
exact
there's all
problem.
these Landon Roads in America, and our Landon
Right.
Roads secret system is
Yep.
exactly what, and then you're like, somehow you're on that call, and
It's
your emotional side of the brain takes over, and you're into confirmation bias, and you want them to be right because you're tired of your business not working. You're tired of just sliding around in the ice, not making the money, not making the traction. You have to pay your rent next month. Like, what are you supposed to do? What are people supposed to do?
so good. You are going to save a lot of people a lot of money and time and hell. So I absolutely love that. I would love to just kind of like prompt some questions for you so you can just knock them
Sure.
out of the park on really just personal branding. Like how would you describe personal branding in 2022? Like we've got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We have all these different platforms. You have a LinkedIn account. You've got a website. You have how you show up in person, trade shows. What is personal branding in 2022?
Do you want to give you my formal definition or the non-formal definition?
I want non-formal Bijal always first and then the
Okay.
formal.
Personal branding is GOAT. It's GOAT. Like, that's it. In 2022, like all that 2019, 2018 hype of the online world is not there, y'all. We are late adopters in this market. Okay. I wish I was online in 2016. I would have been crushing it, y'all. It would have been a whole different stratosphere. I am crushing it now, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Next level of crushing it. What is that?
Right. Whatever that is.
We're
Yep.
not in the heyday. We're not in the heyday. And any really honest business coach or internet marketer, a guru who's been in the game 10 years will absolutely tell you point blank that we are not in the heyday. We are in the late adoption phase of online digital marketing, social media. So knowing we're late to the game, the new hot hype thing trend is personal branding. People do not like businesses. They don't like businesses. They hate corporations. Absolutely, the sentiment in America is to hate large corporate America, whether you're red or blue or purple, whatever shade of politics is out there. People just don't like it. You have to understand Generation Z is entering into the marketplace, and they have billions of dollars of buying power. They are reshifting the way they think. They believe in authenticity. They believe in being who you are and being unique. They believe in you standing up for who you are, your core values. What are you doing for planet Earth? What are you doing for humans? What are you doing for social impact? They will not buy your stuff if you do not have a greater purpose on this planet. So and the way it works is like, we're not looking at the boomers anymore to see where their buying power is. Every single time a generation is on the cusp of changing, you have to, if you want to be smart, if you want to be on the tip of the spear and you want to be spearheading a trend, you want to understand what is the youngest generation who has money to play at the table. What do they want? That's what all the smartest brand agencies, marketing agencies, Fortune 500 companies, which is who I used to do work with when I did my corporate interior design, that's who they look at. It really is the youngest generation. And that's what they want. So your personal brand quite literally is clutch. If you don't know what it is, guess what? You still have one. It's your first name and your last name with your picture. You are recognized in the marketplace, whether you know it or not, whether it's 10 people or 10,000. You are recognized to stand for a certain set of knowledge, of value, a belief system, core values, personality, something. You have a whole dimension and personality that is put out there to the public eye. You just may not be aware of it and actually curating it.
That's so good. It's just like a culture, right? You have a culture in your company, whether or not you want to believe that you do. You either set the culture, you either set the plan of how it's actually going to be, or it just is.
Yes. Yep. And a lot of companies pay a lot of money to try to fix the culture after, but culture is very organic and has too many messy data points because it's driven on humans. And the same thing with personal brand. If you don't think you have it, if you don't recognize it, you don't curate it, there's still a message being set. You're just not actively in charge of it.
That's so good. That's so right. So I want to hear the formal definition now. We've got the informal out of the way. What is the formal definition of a personal brand in 2022?
Okay. A personal brand is just literally a widely recognized and largely uniform impression of an individual. So, whether that individual is representing the business at large or the individual is representing themselves and their business is their namesake, like the Landon Rhodes coaching program, right? That's still the same. So, it's based on your experience, expertise, achievement, personality, all of that. And I think one thing that's helpful is to define what it's not, if you're cool with that, Landon, if we talk about that for a
Yeah,
sec.
no, for sure. Let's do
Okay.
it.
So a personal brand is not personally you. And I'll repeat that because it's just so important. A personal brand is not personally you. So just as your business is separate from who you are as a person, so is your personal brand. So
Mm.
the piece that's confusing is like, okay, Bijal Patel is my name. Yes, that is personally me. But when you talk about Bijal Patel as a personal brand, that is an entity outside of myself where I am curating what is the messaging, what is the positioning, what do I want to be known as, why do I want people attracted to me. I'm curating all of that. So it's actually an element that's outside of me. It represents who I am as a person, but it is not me as a person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've actually never heard it put quite like that, but that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking about the people who I know that I really respect their personal brand, and and obviously it's so closely tied into them as an individual that I immediately associate with them.
Think,
So I'm sure you'll get into that, but yeah, that makes a
yeah.
lot of sense.
Right, like that, like let's pick somebody controversial like Gary Vee, for
Yeah,
example. Like Gary Vee is very much known for his personal brand. There's a lot of people who love him. There's a lot of people who don't like him at all. Gary, that's not Gary Vee though. That's not who Gary Vee is as a person. Gary Vee's personal brand is not Gary Vee. It's a representation and a curation of what Gary Vee wants. Gary Vee's different on Sunday with his family. Like you don't know the definition. You don't know Gary
right.
Vee in and out like that. And you know what I mean? You don't
Yeah,
know the crust of him. Like what's Gary Vee on a bad day? Like what does he look like? Like what
yeah,
happens when he's crying to his wife at 2 a.m.? He's got anxiety or like food poisoning, right? Like
right.
we don't know him like that. And the same is to be said for people we love, like Tony Robbins has a very strong personal brand. So does Richard Branson. Like, I mean, I love Richard Branson. I don't know about you. Like,
Yeah,
I'm just obsessed with the guy. I actually
he's
thought
great.
he was, when everybody kept talking about Russell Brunson, I thought they meant Richard Branson because I wasn't used to being online. And I was
Yeah,
like, man, Richard Branson is really known for this ClickFunnels thing. I guess
this.
he started after Virgin Atlantic. He started ClickFunnels, like,
Oh, it's
you
so
know.
good. It's so believable too, because the
So
fact
true.
that those got confused early. So great. But like you're right, they're different. They're going to show up differently to their family than they are necessarily online. They are crafting a message, but it's still genuine. It's still who they are as people. It's just they're putting out information, content for us to consume, right?
Yeah, because they're building a brand that's bigger than who they are because they have criteria. They've got 1 to 3 major points that they're trying to hit that is all happening under the surface that you may not be aware of
Mhm.
why have they crafted this personal brand. But to drive home the point that people need to hear in 2022, if you're online, if you have a company that focuses on using social media to gain attention, to gain awareness, to gain followers, to gain an audience, to create leads, to convert people, to get sales from social media, you need to pay attention to this. And it really simply is this: when you see Facebook advertisers switching the game, that they're not using Facebook business pages, they're using public figure pages. That is because it's easier for Grant Cardone to sell Grant Cardone rather than it is one of his many brands that are out there.
Mm.
So instead of selling a product or a business name, like even for my business, like we're not out there promoting the launch page. We are out there promoting Bijal Patel, CEO of Launch. People want to know who is the head honcho, head honchi behind this brand, and who am I buying? Because they want to understand it in and out. And people trust, KLT, know, like, and trust, which is like
Yep.
the basic facets of marketing. People want to know, like, and trust the person who is in charge of the brand. So when you see the billions of dollars going to Facebook advertising make a pivot after that iOS 14 crash, and they're pushing people's personal pages, not personal pages, their public figure pages,
Yep.
then you understand that's why TikTok, you as a person is the star. Look at Twitter. Tell me how many Twitter business accounts are off the chain, or are we all looking for the person's name on Twitter?
So true. The only one that I think would probably be off the chain would be Tesla, and that's just because Elon Musk will retweet it every now and then it just blows up. But
Yeah,
but
no, and there's,
but 100%, it's all driven off of the one-to-one interaction from the CEO or the head honcho. Like you nailed it. It's dead on. Fascinating.
So it's really cool. It's a fascinating time to watch how businesses have invested in their business brand. Think about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been around for hundreds of years. They've been working on their branding from the get-go, right? They already have a name. They're already a household name. They're already in the Fortune 500. They're good and they have staying power. Mm-hmm. But if they were trying to come up with something now, we would need to know the Coke founder's name and like understand what that bro's all about. Like, we have to know who 100%.
That's so true. And you can point back to that with like, I remember listening to the, what was it? What was like really popular podcast back in the day where they interviewed founders of like high growth companies? It was like very, very popular, like 5 years ago. Anyway, I remember them talking about Richard Branson. I remember them talking about the founder of like 5 Hour Energy. Oh, I know what it was. It was when they brought up the founder of Quest, and I figured out who Tom Bilyeu was. And I was like, whoa, this is the guy that made that. They exited for $1 billion. And since that day, I followed along with Tom's journey, watched all the YouTube videos about how he built his culture, what that was all like, and then listened to him and his wife's podcast, all these different things. And now I'm getting ads from Tom Bilyeu on my Instagram, not necessarily from Quest, not from any of these other brands. It's Tom Bilyeu, it's Jesse Itzler, it's Andy Frisella, it's Gary Vee, it's Ed Mylett. It's their
Ed
companies.
Mylett.
Yeah.
And it's literally called the Ed Mylett Show, right? It's like these people recognize that their personality and who they are personage wise. And I think partially, that the change also happened with like, we already talked about like people not loving the corporate America thing and these big businesses and all that stuff. People wanted to go back to owning their own businesses, but it all comes back to people wanting more control over their freaking lives and destinies. And it's like, you work with these big corporations. What do? They pay you little, they suck you dry, they work you to the bone, and then they fire or lay you off at the moment there's a recession, and they bring in cheaper, younger staff on your back, right? So they all work like that. And so people wanted to reclaim their lives. Like, what happened to the great American dream? Because like, look at inflation right now. We're not living the great American dream like they were in the 80s, like when I was born. Like, we're not living that era of like enjoying like the single family home and being able to own your car and not being knees deep in debt from going to college or whatever you ended up doing, having all these back-to-back recessions. And literally the post-COVID time right now that we're entering and we're here, people are fed up. And that great resignation that happened where like 20% of people, I don't know the exact statistic, don't quote me on that, but an enormous amount of people quit their jobs come January of this past 2022 year. And it was literally dubbed the Great Resignation by like the Wall Street Journal. And literally ask any big employer around, they can't find people to work. People refuse to sell their soul to the devil anymore.
Wow. Yeah. And so in December alone, this is in December, 4.4 million workers, about 3% of the workforce quit their job.
Yeah.
So that's just like, in December.
It's like an unprecedented high. And like it's just so fascinating to watch that now. And so you're going to see more people coming up with their businesses, more people being on social media. So it's a great time to have a
Totally.
social media business. Social media is not going anywhere. It is only getting stronger.
Right.
And then understanding and this doesn't mean, by no means am I suggesting your business shouldn't have branding, don't have any branding. It doesn't matter if you don't have social media channels. Don't get that confused with saying personal branding is really taking a really strong play here. Business branding is still needed there. Like, you still need people to understand this is our business, this is what we do, this is what we represent, this is what we sell. You're still going to need that. And not everyone wants to be the face of their brand. So that creates a whole nother level of intricacy and complexity there. But perfect for a brand strategist like me, it's just more problems to solve for my
Right.
market and to get that delineated for people.
So you brought up a really good point about like the delineation between having the business have its name and then having like Bijal Patel own like Launch versus Bijal Patel or Grindstone versus Landon, right? So the big reason that I didn't go with any sort of like an individual, like, because especially with like executive producers or videographers, a lot of times they will literally just go with their name because
Yep.
they are going to be one of 40 people on a set, right? They're going to be the director of photography. Like, we know the names of a few directors of photography on like huge, like the Marvel productions, right? But also there's Universal, there's Warner Brothers. So my question to you is it's the type of businesses that these people are creating. Is that also leading people to want to self-brand their business a lot more because of the type of businesses that they are making? Because Bijal Patel is not necessarily a saleable asset, right? Like, you can't really sell your name and expect somebody else to take that on. So my question is like, where does that line get drawn for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we've had people come and get rebranded with us because they did want to become a sellable asset, and they wanted to be able to have an exit with the company they built, and they realized they built it off their namesake. But I would say it's a couple things. So there's certain industries that are known for just taking on their name, like interior design is one of them. There's a lot of like
That's true.
Jesse Casey designs, it's like
Yeah.
just really common. Architecture is one of them. Photography, Brian Stark Photography Studio. Like, they're just used to doing that, including fitness pros, personal trainers, those type of people are just used to saying, it's me. I'm the solopreneur. I'm the one who sells this. This is my name. It's my genius, whatever. Here's what I would ask people to consider, because I've branded a lot of fit pros. I also was my own I was an interior designer, and now I'm doing this. The reason I came up with Launch is because I always saw a much bigger vision for my company. It was never going to be, and it never is going to be, the Bijal Show. I do not want to be the star-centered Lady Gaga of this production called Launch. I just don't. And I knew that. I am an exceptional leader. I am also a great team maker and a team player. I am not meant to be left alone. So I knew I was not going to enter and continue the business world as a solopreneur. And actually, right off the bat, I was already contracting people in. It was important for me that our company name also didn't make anybody feel like less than, to be like, there's already a power structure in play with me being the founder and CEO.
Right.
Now, on top of that, you are on Bijal Patel's team. I mean, tell me if you don't feel like you are a sub bullet and I'm the headliner, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want that. And what I've noticed when I've branded so many people, either taken their name out of their business name, out of their first LLC, and then come up with their business name, they realize they have teams now. They realize being the face of the brand was exhausting, and they didn't want all that. They didn't want all the stardom. They didn't want
Yeah.
all the, like, the heat of the lights always being on you is exhausting. And it is very hard to outsource and delegate the authority to other team members when you've branded yourself as being the star of the show.
So good. So that leads us to the question of, if we're going to brand ourselves personally and utilize that for, for the growth of our businesses, how does that play into basically, because I think one of the biggest things that businesses are looking at when they're going to acquire is, okay, what's the acquisition like? Like, how easy is it for Bijal and Launch to acquire customers? Like how are they going about getting their customers? Is it strictly off of Bijal's name, even if the business is called Launch, or is it because they have incredible systems in play that are constantly churning out leads and there's people inside closing it? So while people they're building up their personal profile, they're starting to build their reputation, they're doing all the things they need to do to build their personal brand. Should they keep those things in mind, or what questions should they be asking themselves as they're doing that to make sure that the business is absolutely self-sufficient, but at the same time is being like, it's kind of like a battery that's getting plugged into the company?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what needs to be done in that regard?
It, I don't like giving it depends answers, because like that's always dissatisfying as the receiver or the audience member who's listening. But it does depend, but I'll give you the way out of it. So if you're building your business using social media and using the organic strategy, which by the way, you don't take anything away from this, please use your personal profile on Facebook to talk about your business, y'all. You can't just use your public figure page. You can't just use your business page. I don't care if 1,000 or 10,000 people like it. The Facebook algorithm will not show those pages as much as they do a personal profile. So yes, you must use your personal profile to talk about business. It can be 20% business, 50% business, 80% business. Do whatever you like. Please don't worry about what your mama or your high school friends think. You just need to plunge in. Okay. So that I'm talking to my people who are 6 figures or less than 6 figures. Like, stop worrying about that. Personal pages on Facebook get shown way more. Same. I mean, even with Instagram, if you look at Instagrams, people's personal handles get more traction, more interaction than people's business handles do, even though they have both. I would say, depending on which one you start, if you're going to start organic first, you need to understand that the paid marketing arm is going to help create the machinery, that the engine that's in place, so that marketing constantly has a system. There's a lot of people though who have built their business from ads first because they didn't know organic, or they didn't like it, or they didn't want to work it. And then they're trying to reverse engineer and create an organic following, because why? Your organic marketing costs $0. And so they've spent all this on ads, and they're like, wait a second, like our profit margin isn't there. I heard this thing called organic can drive you 6 figures a month. Yeah, I can. And so then they want to have an organic following. And so they'll come back. That's probably when you're gonna have to play into your personal brand some more. And that even means, even if you're showing up on your business pages, you're letting your personality show through as the owner. Like, are you doing your reels, like that are super popular right now? Are you doing stories? Are you showing your audience both pictures, short blurbs, giving them trainings, like putting out quotes that are related to the owner? Like, you can still kind of fuse it in. It is a little bit individualized, but it is something that you could at least have a starting strategy to say, hey, I know I'm in this boat, so I need to worry about this one second. Did that answer your question?
Totally. Yeah. I think basically I'm catching myself overlapping between marketing and branding, which is the first thing we talked about at the start of this show. And as you're, it's not just personal marketing. You are building a personal brand, which is going to carry with you regardless of whatever business you're running. And
Yes.
personal brands are with you until you die, obviously. Like, you, just like a culture, you have one whether or not you think you do. So I think that even in asking that question, I was getting a little bit tangled up in trying to answer it for myself.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you separating those out for myself and the audience. That's super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. They are tricky. They're tricky to overlap. And it's just like one more nuance you have to learn in business. But once you figure it out and you start to, once you understand this like foundational piece that we covered, you'll start to see and be like, oh, wait, the people who are winning in business are posting on their personal page. And you'll start to be able to see that, be able to mimic it.
Right. And while branding and posting on social, that can drive business to you, you are still building a brand. You are still building a conversation around what people are saying about you, how you're being perceived. And just like Bijal said earlier, the marketing machine is a separate entity from that. And I think that's a really important delineation to make here, is that the marketing machine that's actually generating the leads, while it can be fed by the brand, it's actually a separate item.
Totally.
Right?
Yep, totally. Marketing is very short term, based on campaigns. Like, it's like, ooh, let's try this angle. Let's do this. Let's do that. Brand is the one that's like, wait, but this is who we are. This is what we stand for. Does that marketing campaign tie back to who we really are? And they constantly are at a play with each other to say one supports another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Branding is the North Star. And I would say marketing is almost like the compass.
Super good.
I just came up with that.
You put such great words
to
this. This is awesome.
I feel really, really, really cool about that analogy, by the way, but that's
you should feel really cool about it.
I feel really cool about it.
You can pull that out, put that in your marketing, and let me know how that works for you.
Let me put this in the marketing. Yeah.
That's good. So I would love if you could just quickly, as we kind of like wrap, I would love to kind of round out this lesson in educating people about personal branding. So if you could, I'd just love for you to like riff on the different pillars that make up a personal brand, and then maybe just a few examples, I think, and that would absolutely kill it for this episode.
Cool. Okay. So the pillars for personal brand, through my perspective, through my personal brand, or business brand, whatever you want to call it, is reputation, impact, and legacy. And so if you can get these three things figured out, and you can get a much better idea, and you're like, what, like, that's a very high level visionary stuff. Well, first of all, you're an entrepreneur, so you like it anyway. Don't lie to me. You might not know what it is, but you got to understand, like, let's start with the biggest picture thing, legacy. Legacy is the image and memory of who you are that you are leaving behind once you have pieced out on this earth. So what are people saying at your funeral? What do you want on your headstone? What do you want? Like, if somebody were to do a eulogy of you and it was to include some things that you did in terms of your personal successes in business, what would they say? You want that in your legacy. You want to be remembered for these things. You need to know what that is. Then moving a step back, impact. Hey, this is the way that you get to help people in the world and other businesses or anything else that you want to help while you're still living through the impact that you have, right? So you want to outline that and say, okay, the legacy that I want to leave is this, the impact I want to have with people, or again, society, the world, kids, like rainforest, whatever it is, right? Like, I want to save pandas. Okay, cool. You want to save pandas. Like, that is an impact, right?
Right.
So you want to know what that is. And it's high level vision stuff. And then from there, you want to write out, what is your reputation? So your reputation is something that's actively being contorted and changed, right? Like, so people have an idea. Your reputation is, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? So if somebody were to say, hey, should I work with Grindstone? Like, should I hop on? Should I get some of their podcasting production services? What do you think? And they're DMing someone, talking to someone, texting someone without you there. What are they saying? And this sounds like, it's like, wait, I thought you were going to tell me about like what to use for my logo. No, because I don't care about that. Like, that's all fluff. You don't need to worry about the visual part of it. That's fluff. Okay. This is the deeper part outside of all that hype and the jargon. It is, if you understand these pillars are, if you think of an oak tree that lives 200 years, right? Like, if we were imagined as a human, about 200 years is as long as anyone's legacy is pretty much going to live. Like, Elon Musk gets to live a little longer, but let's be honest with ourselves. Like, we don't remember the ancient kings of Mesopotamia. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Or Mesopotamia. See, I don't even know how to say it. Something
I'm out.
Back in the day that's old. I can't even say the word anymore. Some ancient civilization. We don't care. So you don't need to worry about being the 0.001%. And if you think you are, go for it. Cool. But most of us don't. So think about your legacy as a 200-year mark. That's about as long as you're going to get remembered, even in your own family. So, and then think about random people remembering you, right? You might have your name on a building, and even that is only going to take you so far. The kids who come to your college are going to be like, Landon Rhodes School of Systematizing and Processes. Cool. You know, like, you know what I mean? But it's going to end there. So if you can understand what is your current reputation, how is that going to turn into impact, and how is that going to then create a compelling legacy that lives on for 100 years after you die? If you can understand that, that is the system that you need to then say, okay, that's my basis for where this personal brand should be curated.
That's super good. Starting at the end in mind. And man, so when you're going about putting this together for people, what are some of the initial questions you're asking them? Like, what are you just straight up asking them? Like, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Like, what are some of the questions that you're going in and asking them?
Like, how are you being viewed? And when I ask people that question, they're like, but wait, what? Because it creates this immediate fear of like us back in our tribe days and not being sure of what people think about us. And it is scary to face that music, especially with your personal brand. You can hide behind your business brand. Your business brand is more distant from you. And the personal brand definitely feels more personal. What do people view as your number one strength? A lot of people, a lot of people would like to be viewed differently than what people actually say their number one strength is. For example, I would like to be known as a branding goddess. What people say my number one strength is like the energy that I bring and the light I bring in a room. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What does
But
my,
that's not what I've
well,
been working on.
I have not been working on my energy. I am not here to bring light in a room as the light like shines on me right now.
Right.
What? So like
Yeah.
I've actually pulled people aside and be like, can you decode like what is this whole like you're magnetizing? So what? And how is that monetizable? Like I'm not seeing dollar signs behind that. I don't understand what that has to do with
How do I
branding.
put that
Like,
in a VSL? That is,
how do I sell that? This
right.
is nonsense. I'm going back to my Indian roots. Like, no, you know what? Where's the dollar signs? That sounds like a broke compliment. But it's just like that. I keep getting said that I have like the best energy. I inject energy into people. I make people feel awesome and find the potential within themselves. I'm like, all right, we're getting a little warmer. But I got beat on my head so many times with it. So I want to ask you, Landon, right here, because our viewers should learn through this process, what do people view as your number one strength?
What do people view as my number one strength? My integrity.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I think that's definitely it. And
Did that come as a surprise to you?
I think sometimes, yeah, I would say it was a little bit of a surprise. I think I naturally focus on just trying to be like, you even mentioned this when you got on the call, like, well, why would I not be taking that advice? I feel like I'm out of integrity. Like immediately I was like, yeah, you're right. Like if somebody told you to do that and you said you would do it, like you need to be in integrity. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's actually one of our, people give us so much crap about this in our company, but it's our first core value, which is, integrity. And the reason I say that that's our first core value is because without integrity, nothing works. And, people can say, well, that's obvious. Everybody should have integrity.
That's not true.
But do they? Like,
No,
does everyone walking around have integrity? Because we're going to hire, fire, and promote with those core values. So, we've sure had people that have worked for us that don't have integrity. We have people that currently work for us and work with me that do have integrity. I know the difference between those two people. And the only reason the other ones are gone is because we were judging them against our core values.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating to me.
So cool.
Yeah. And that's why I think that's why core values are so critical. Like it's so important to have them and to truly like mean them and live by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what my fiance always says to me, is that like, that's her number one favorite thing. And then I would say that I like have seen that or noticed that more since she said it. She's kind of highlighted it. So.
Well, I love that. That's always a smart person to listen to, is the person who's closest to you. And I swear, I think my husband said it 10 years ago and I was like, shut up anyways. I want to be an award-winning interior designer. Like, what are you
anyway,
talking about?
goddess. Like, I'm interior.
God. I was just like interior. See, then it was interior design, award-winning goddess.
Award-winning
and
goddess.
now I'm like, now I'm onto this, but like, yeah, it's like an irrefutable, like I will get that compliment all day, every day. Even when I never try. I'm not trying to do it. It's just, it is who I am. And the rest is on the other side of it. It's just really cool to ask people that, right? Because like, if you can understand, and all of us, have gotten this information, it's cool to reflect on for the audience listeners, is like, hey, what is the thing that you constantly get complimented on that you never try to get complimented on?
Wow.
You know
Ask
what I
yourself
mean?
that question, guys. That's an interesting one. That's
like, I'm not like, today I'm going to put the energy on. Like, I don't prep myself for like that. I don't have to do that. Today will be the light. Tomorrow will be gloom and doom, but today we're going to show up as the light. Like, I don't have those self conversations.
No. What do you, so actually that actually brings up a great point. Obviously you have bad days too, where you aren't bubbly, like full of energy and full of life. Bijal, what do you do to overcome that? And how soon are you able to catch yourself in like realize that's happening to you?
Okay, so let's be real. I have those bad days all the time, like at least twice a week, depending on the week, maybe once. If I don't have a bad day in a week, I'm like, next week I'm going to be out 5 days. Like something tragic is going to happen. Like I don't know what's going on.
Energy
But
cycles are gonna hit. I'm gonna
I'm
die
gonna be
next
like
week.
taken down. Like, is Mercury in retrograde? My husband's even like Googling it. He's like, she's going down. So you cannot have this kind of personality and not have the yin to the yang. Like you
Right.
have the other side.
Yeah.
But I would say I listen to some really awesome mindset podcasts that I have found like really inspire me and kind of get me going. I will do my gratitude journaling in practice. I will work out. I will like physically make myself work out and do some fitness or look at my caffeine level. Have I drank too much caffeine? Have I drank too much alcohol? Like what has caused this, like what has at least maybe not caused it, but what has not helped me? And so have I had too much caffeine? Have I drank like 2 days back to back? I worked out. I'll take a nap. I'll be like, you know what? I'm just really tired and I need to like conk out and take an afternoon nap. And that works. And I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel guilty. I don't think I'm lazy. I am not lazy. I will do like some of those things, or sometimes it's about connecting with an old friend. You think your mindset screwed up and you're blaming your business, you're blaming your revenue numbers, you're blaming the marketing leads, you're wondering why you didn't sell more of your master classes, you're wondering why more people didn't bite on your lead magnet, how come everyone's saying no on your sales calls? And you actually realize you feel like you've been a shitty partner to in your relationship or to your husband, and you're
Wow.
concealing it and projecting it all onto your business, and it might be in your relationships that are really causing you to feel out of sorts. And so you've got to, I mean, I don't ever do all of these at once because I'm a human, so I try to pick
Right.
one or two things. But you know, sometimes it's just phoning a friend and being like,
Wow.
I feel low, or I'll talk to, one of my favorite things to do is to talk to my entrepreneur friends and be like, hey, when I get a call, should we like have an accountability call? And having other entrepreneurs, even especially when they start and they're like, man, I just feel really out of sorts this week. I'm like, okay, thank God. I don't even know why I'm like starting to feel better. Like, what's wrong with you? Hey, this is what's wrong with me. Dang, that's kind of what's wrong with me too. Okay, maybe we're okay. I'm normal. So
Yeah.
it is normal, and you've got to prepare yourself. Like you have to understand all these entrepreneurs do mindset stuff for a reason, because it's like a key, but sometimes you have to move your body to get yourself out of state. Sometimes you need to come back into gratitude
Mm.
and say, I have a roof, I have air, I get water, I can afford the food I'm eating. I'm good. Like life is really, really, really good here. And just remember that we're all privileged in this like first world country life that we're living. And you kind of have to like go back and you have to check yourself. So
For sure.
there's a lot of that, man. There's probably even more, you know what I mean? Get in the hot tub, like lay down with your kids, like tickling kids, like tickle your kids, and like remember to have fun again. If you don't have fun, act like a kid again. Go ride a bicycle instead of use your Peloton. It's different, you know.
It's
It's different.
different. Yes. You're just like a focus on play, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I did that the other day. I wrote a couple handwritten notes and immediately felt better.
yeah,
Like just a couple like quick handwritten notes. It's like 10 lines. And just to show some people that I was grateful for the
yep.
friendship or relationship or things that they had done for me. And like, it's not complicated. Didn't take a lot of time, but I immediately left the office that day. I felt like I was in a bit of a rut, but I left at the office like cloud nine. Felt great.
Yeah,
Just hadn't expressed gratitude in a long
yeah,
time. So,
yeah. And
and you,
let's just normalize for all the people that are out there, like you're not supposed to be happy all the time. You're not supposed to be shiny and bright. And it's okay if it takes you longer than 24 hours to head out of a mood. That happens to me too. Sometimes I'm just in a week of a funk, or weeks, or a season of a funk, and just can't find it. I can't get there, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And put yourself out there to the right people. Like vulnerability takes a lot of courage. And, you know, Landon, you and I share in this belief about vulnerability, but
mhm,
have even one or two trusted people that you can share things out and be there for them too, like reciprocate the relationship. But it is perfectly fine to not be able to use all these hacks, life hacks and habit hacks, and then you're not supposed to live a perfectly happy merry life like 24/7. Like you're
right.
supposed to have dips and downs and moods and moments and all that stuff, and allow yourself the grace to be a human in this thing we call the human condition, and let yourself feel your feelings. And make your way out of it. But you're not a failure if you don't switch it around and reframe every thought to become a positive one.
Dang. Mic drop. Mic drop from Bijal. I don't have anything other than what you just said. That's going to like perfectly round out the episode. And I just want to thank you for being so present on the episode today, and just for giving your whole heart here.
Absolutely.
You dropped some serious bombs on me. Like I was like deep in contemplation for several minutes during this entire show. So really, really love this. It's
Love
always
that.
great catching up with you.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. You're so much fun to talk to. It's just like talking to a friend, and it was so easy. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. I loved being on here.
Yep, absolutely. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Spark to Fire. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you leave a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. That's where we've got all of our reviews going. And screenshot this. And Bijal, what's your Instagram handle? If they can they tag you on Instagram at a story?
Yeah,
it's a good place
it's
to tag you.
at We Launch You, WELAUNCHUYOU, at We Launch You. And that's easier than trying to spell my name for people. So, if your name is a different name, you could use your personal brand. I have one, but it would be too hard for you to follow.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, guys, make sure you do that. Make sure you reach out to Bijal for any branding related questions or information.
Yeah.
She is an incredible resource, and has helped me a ton with my stuff as well. So that's going to do it for this episode of Spark to Fire, and keep striking.